So, coming up, top 5 tips for developing your own folding game. Stay tuned to watch me and Henry.
You can't do them all.
28.
We're gonna have a dispute right now. We're having a dispute right now. So coming up, top 10 recipes for cooking eel pie and eel stew.
Stay tuned to find out who's the better brother.
Me. Secret.
Rob.
Me.
Rob.
Hello, my name is Henry Hoffman.
And I'm Fred Hoffman.
And we are Newfangled Games. So today we're going to show you some gameplay from Paper Trail as part of the London Game Festival official selection.
Continue.
So Paper Trail is a top-down puzzle adventure game set in a completely foldable world. You explore lots of different pieces of paper with a world on the front and the back, and you can fold those papers over to create sort of new puzzle opportunities and new ways to explore the world.
Correct. So we're now about to look at the game itself. I hope you're braced and prepared for an amazing experience of all the tantalizing senses that are about to come upon you.
Let's do that again. Let's do that again.
I thought that was perfect. I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey everyone, this is Paper Trail. We're going to show you sort of a brief exclusive first look at the first 10 minutes of gameplay in Paper Trail. And we've got a lot more stuff to show throughout the festival and sort of over the next year. But for now, we're just going to show you the first sort of condensed 10 minutes of the game that we have so far.
So with no further ado, let the story unfold. Right.
So this is Paper Trail.
Here we go.
When you first load up the game, you're kind of presented with this strange village, and you can see kind of the house that you grew up with there in the top left-hand corner. Some of these characters are changing in the full game, but at the moment there's kind of this old lady who's craving some eel pie, and her husband hasn't come home. Is that right, Fred? Husband hasn't come home?
That's right. Yeah. It's that's standard classic position of being in of your husband's eel fisher, being stranded by a storm on the other side of a bridge, which I think we can all relate to in the 21st century.
Exactly. So this is an introduction to kind of the core mechanic. The idea is that there's a world on the front and the back of the paper. Here, this is kind of a demonstration of how the mechanic works, really, that you're able to fold down the top of the paper in order to fix the bridge and then progress across to an area that was previously inaccessible.
Yeah, so this is the first time you see the paper folding as well, which is usually a bit of an aha moment for people who don't know what the game is going to be.
Yep. So here we've released Jimmy, the eel fisherman. So he's going to come home a little bit later to greet his lovely wife.
Sliver back.
So that was just vertical folding. So you can fold kind of from different angles. So here you've got sort of a woodcutter, a lumberjack character who has trapped themselves through felling trees, essentially. But luckily enough, Paige, our protagonist, is able to fold the world horizontally to create a new pathway, which allows her to access them.
Yeah.
And essentially free them later.
I think this is the first time you see the paths lining up as well, which is going to be like a theme throughout the rest of the game in terms of lining up paths to create new and unexpected ways through the map, through the world.
Yeah, it's super important from a design perspective to make it clear that there's a clear path through the level, otherwise you could just fold aimlessly all over the place.
Yeah. There's been a bit of a design challenge in general, is that there's designing around so many potential folding solutions to make sure that there's one satisfying and recognizable single solution.
Yeah, exactly. So that previous piece of paper we were able to fold twice in order to solve a puzzle. Essentially, that's kind of the first time multiple folding is introduced in order to solve a puzzle.
Yeah,
now,
and that's... Oh, so you go.
Now we've got diagonal folding.
Yeah. So what the village is doing is incrementally increasing the complexity of folding as you go through, so that you get a taste for every single kind of basic iteration of folding before you move on to the actual difficult stuff.
Yeah, and what's key here is that there's these kind of narrative elements interwoven with this, so you're kind of going through the village, fixing the different things that the storm has broken, because we feel like that anchors, like it gives purpose to your folding, although later on throughout the game it's much more about sort of traversal of sort of space rather than solving problems necessarily, though we do have kind of interludes of that throughout.
Yeah, it's a bit of both, but it becomes more of point A to point B when point B seems impossible to get to at first.
Yeah, exactly. we're telling the story of Paige, who is sort of the protagonist of the game, and she has been offered a place at university through a letter that she receives one day. And her parents are very against the idea of her leaving the village, and she's very kind of settled at home. But she dreams of bigger things, essentially. So she is a runaway, essentially. She runs away from home in order to pursue her sort of dreams of further education. And then through various folding-based obstacles, she's able to reach that. And then I won't tell you anymore because that'll kind of spoil the rest of the narrative. But
there's more coming. Yeah, there's more coming.
Definitely not because we're in the middle of a rewrite.
Definitely not. It's got nothing to do with that. So yeah, that's the story.
So here you've kind of navigated back through the way that you came. Now that you've unlocked all the different kind of folding angles that you can. And this now allows you to exit the village because you can combine everything you've learned in order to progress. And this is all about sort of assembling a shape, which triggers sort of the unlocks to the next area.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially all the folding tutorial at the beginning of the game. This is where it starts to get really interesting because we start to incorporate what are normally sort of traditional top-down puzzle game mechanics. With the folding, and this is where like new gameplay opportunities really arise. Here you've got like a boulder that you're pushing, but what you're able to do is you're able to fold over the reverse of the paper in order to create a new pathway that you can push the boulder from the front of the paper onto the back, which allows you to try and navigate the space in interesting ways.
Yeah, it's basically through what's quite simple mechanics on paper, no pun intended, kind of come together to create really unexpected and complex interactions with one another. In ways that surprise even us when we're developing it. So it's very fun to design puzzles for.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I had to do quite early on is build a tool that allowed us to design puzzles during play mode, because trying to design like a puzzle on the front and the back of the paper, like without being able to fold at the same time, was like super hard. So we built a tool that allows us to play the game, fold the paper, and then design the puzzles on the pre-folded paper. That makes things so much easier when sort of building levels.
Yeah, because you can be moving things around and have things folded over and move things over one unit, move things up one unit. And then you can also try and find unideal solutions to puzzles as well. Because a lot of times we've been designing puzzles, I've come up with this really complicated 15-step process to solve a puzzle, and then someone makes one fold and then walks around the whole thing.
There's actually, in this demo, there's actually still a level. There's still a level where we designed this complicated puzzle that has maybe 20 different steps in order to progress, and actually you just fold the bottom up and then you can just walk across the whole level.
Yeah. We've included that for illustrative purposes. That's why that's in there.
Absolutely. Actually, did we actually include that in this video? Maybe.
I actually think it might be in this. Well, look forward to that. See if you can spot which one we hack.
So this is a really interesting mechanic now. So we're introducing the dominoes, which is really interesting because what the dominoes do is they provide fixed pathways. So you can only progress through a pathway if you fold the paper in the correct way, which from the design perspective is really useful because it really prevents the player from just finding loads of unintended solutions to puzzles. It allows us to create much more intent to the puzzle design. Plus it's quite nice, you lining up matching dominoes and then they light up and then you can walk on them.
Yeah, it's satisfying. I think one thing which is about this playthrough, which is worth mentioning, is that this is played through by someone who has played the game hundreds of times, whereas the actual speed of the game is obviously quite a lot more laid back and
yes. This is essentially a speed run.
Yeah,
but it's good because it shows a lot of gameplay in a relatively short space of time. Some of these puzzles you might be playing for sort of 10 or 15 minutes to try and navigate. So yeah, by the way, this is full of spoilers. It's a little bit late to tell you that, but
oh yeah, spoilers.
If you want to play the game, it's full of spoilers.
Yeah, well, I was saying that we've played through this ourselves and still forget puzzle solutions sometimes. So seeing it once shouldn't spoil solutions.
No, that's very true actually. When I'm going through and playing levels that I haven't looked at for maybe a month, I immediately forget all the solutions.
We need playthrough videos like this actually just to remind us of how to actually play our own game.
Yeah, exactly. So this is another mechanic that's introduced. We've got sort of keys and doors. This allows us to create sort of these branching levels where you kind of have to go off across multiple pieces of paper to try and find a key, and then you kind of retraverse back, and then you might be able to access a door in another area. It allows for much more branching level design, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, it's satisfying. It's nice as well because you can access new papers in different ways, which you weren't expecting to be able to, and you never know what you're going to uncover on another sheet.
Ah, yes.
Yeah,
Full of the buzzwords.
full of the buzzwords, brimming.
We've got these really nice cutscenes that we're working on at the moment that aren't in the demo, but they will be in the next demo that we showcase. Where we've got foldable cutscenes, and in order to progress through the narrative itself, you have to fold the cutscenes together in order to match images. So we're kind of reusing the core gameplay mechanic of the game to create these sort of interactive cutscenes. We're really excited about that because we think it's something that hasn't necessarily been done before. In order to get that right, we've got to tell the story in a way that can be told through sort of aligning these different images, and it's very dependent on the player's input in order to progress through the narrative. So that requires some like interesting design around how the story is told.
It's like show don't tell, but on steroids. Like it's good though because it forces you to cut down on like pointless exposition and like really fatiguing amounts of dialogue. So it's all told visually and interactively, which is really satisfying, but it's hard to design for. So it's a lot of work.
And then this is an interesting one as well because we've got multiple sheets of paper to solve sort of a puzzle.
So whilst the first one where they interact directly with each other across multiple sheets of paper as well, right? Spoilers.
Yeah, exactly. So, so you've got multiple pieces of paper lined up, but you can only fold the piece of paper that you're actively in, which means that you kind of need to arrange the different pieces of paper in the correct way in order to progress. So that's quite nice. And then actually we get to this, what we call kind of like the final puzzle, which we have at the end of each world. It's like the boss puzzle, essentially, because there's no combat or anything like that. It's a completely non-violent puzzle game. We want we want there to be like a sort of a magic moment, we kind of call it ourselves, where at the end of the world it incorporates all the mechanics that we've introduced throughout that world in a super hard boss puzzle essentially. And for these specifically, you're able to fold any piece of paper that you can see. So here you can see you're on the central piece of paper, but actually you're able to fold all the adjacent papers as well. Which adds like a completely new gameplay element because you can kind of arrange things in a way before you progress, and which is really nice to have that kind of unique element just for these specific puzzles at the end.
It does add like a layer of, obviously it adds a layer of complexity, but it also adds like a layer of ease to gameplay as well. It's satisfying being able to fold lots of pieces of paper that without having to traverse all the way over to them, make your folds and traverse back around again. So it's quite dynamic gameplay, which is nice.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the challenges as well. As levels get bigger and more complex, you don't want to just be like spending loads of time walking from one side, folding over, walking to the other side, folding over, because that's quite laborious and sort of labor intensive. So when you get to these much larger levels, having them all sort of connected and being able to fold any one you want in order to be able to see anything at any time is much more satisfying, I think.
So in terms of like roles, I've been zealously guarding my role as art director. I've been resisting all attempts to delegate, all attempts to hire on new people, because I think it's easy to lose a grasp on doing what it is that brought you into the industry in the first place. I'm very passionate about doing the art and being in control of the aesthetic in general. So I guard it jealously, like a dragon on his pile of gold.
You say that, but we're already talking about delegating out some of the cutscene art.
No. Yeah, we are. It's gotten to the point now where we've grown to the point where you can't have single roles. How long did it take people on average to complete this level?
So I think we were looking at 15 to 20 minutes. I think so. It's quite a complicated puzzle. I think like during user testing in the future that we might ease some of the difficulty, especially in some of the later levels. Like the difficulty spikes at the moment are completely crazy. But
punishing.
Yeah. Well, do you want to talk about some of the art inspirations for this level?
Oh yeah. So this what's nice is when we get towards the ends of the levels, we get the chance to really spend quite a lot of time on the art. So at the end of every level, we have what we call a magic moment, where we can kind of lean in to really creating a more dynamic world at the end of it. So we've had the kind of statues and the pinks and the blues throughout, but now we've got a bigger space to play around with and actually like really do a proper sized art piece. So at the end of every environment, end of every world, we have these kind of like large, open, ethereal, symmetrical spaces, which offer a bit of a reward to the player at the end of enjoying all of our puzzles. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. So we've been Newfangled Games. We've been showcasing Paper Trail here today. Big thanks to London Games Festival for including us in the official selection and for making us sort of a part of their festival. It's been fantastic. If you want to find out more about Paper Trail and Newfangled Games, go to papertrailgame.com and we should have Steam wishlist available by the time this broadcasts. So it'd be great if you could go ahead and wishlist the game too. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye.